because of education abroad, in both school fees and upkeep of our children. But the thing is this: what are we really losing as an intangible assets? For instance, if you want to sell a company, right? They come and value the company. But the intangible assets of the country, the company is what you base the value of the company on, plus the tangible assets. So you could have a company that is worth 20 billion, but the intangible asset is worth another 20 billion, right? These kids that we are sending abroad that are not coming back could be costing us as much as another 10, 15 billion in intangible assets every year. So, is it just to create wealth, get out of recession? If we create wealth, right, there's a principle in economics that once you get richer, import increases. Education, when you go outside the country to school, is actually recorded as an import, right? Because you're taking funds out of the country. Is it just to create wealth? The solution is not just to get out of recession. The solution is for the government, right, to train you and I, to arm you and I with the right standard of education and the right skills. If we do that, if the government does that, right, what happens is they reduce the number of people going abroad. We create a market that other people can come into Nigeria to also school. But the interesting thing is this. Between year 2000 and 2010, wealth was created in this country. And as wealth was created, 71 Nigerian students abroad increased by 71%. So getting out of recession is not the solution. We must fix the system. We must fix the educational system. So we look at the foreign strategy and our ignorance. The truth is, the foreign schools, right, or the foreign governments, they have our data. And why did I say that? I'll read something to you. In February 2015, the ICF Monitor reported that the British Council had projected that Nigeria would lead the world in tertiary age population growth through 2024. The Council projected that population age between 18 to 24 years will grow from 16.1 million in 2013 to 22.5 million in 2024, representing an annual growth of 3.1%, surpassing that of China that will grow at minus 2.9% and India at 0.3%. They know that we do not have the facilities. They know that our population is growing. They know, they see the population expenditure that we are not meeting up with what? UN regulations, right? And that is why all the recruitment agencies have flooded Nigeria. And the other ignorance, right? We have the British schools here, we have the American schools here that are practicing their curriculum. What do you think will happen? And then, every year, what never happened in the 70s or 60s, now a whole class goes to UK, they go to France, they are going to South Africa for excursion. What do you think they are doing? They are psychologically preparing these kids. They are psychologically preparing them to school abroad. Most of these kids, when they come back, they start to tell their parents, it is Britain I want to go to for university. It is France I want to go to, or it is the US I want to go to. And we are the ones, at the end of the day, doing what? We are the ones losing. It is putting a strain on our economy. So, but the thing is this. Is it wrong to go school abroad? It is not wrong, right? You cannot control people's choices, but you can influence it. And how can you influence people's choices? By giving them a better services. Right? When you give them better services, you influence their choices. But the thing is this. You see, the global education market, right? Countries have built education into a massive industry. It is not just a learning place anymore. And in 2012, right, it was reported that the global education market was worth $4.4 trillion, and that it will grow by 23% by end of 2017 to $5.41 trillion. But the question is this: what is Nigeria's share in this market? Let's look at the United States, right? United States also have students outside the country. with respect that they also have students within the country. But the United States has a trade surplus in education, right, of over 450,000 students. The United Kingdom has a trade surplus of over 460,000 students. Canada has a trade surplus of over 300,000 students. South Africa has a trade surplus of over 64,000 students. Egypt has a trade surplus of over 29,000 students. The question is this: who are those coming to Nigeria to school? Who are those coming to Nigeria to school? Who are those bringing dollars into this economy to pay us in dollars to go to our schools? So, the next graph, right, is Nigeria compared to the world. This is our population. We have removed, what we did was to remove the United States, because the United States was an outlier in this case. At 17.16 trillion education expenditure in 44 years, dwarfed every other country. So we removed the United States, right? But you see, Nigeria, the only two countries that surpass Nigeria is Indonesia and Brazil in population. But the interesting thing is this: when we now plotted in the education expenditure, look at where Nigeria is. The graph refused to take off from the ground. Nigeria is on the extreme. But you see, you can see where the problem is, right? Look at the population. Look at the other countries that are less populated, right? But when you put in the education expenditure, look at where Nigeria is. So, but we looked at it, we said, okay, fine. Germany, Canada, United States, Germany, and Australia are OECD countries that are referred to as the developed economy. Okay, let us remove them and compare Nigeria to developing economies. And this was what we still came up with. We are not investing in human capital development. Education is the right of a child. The schools, I always tell people, if you want to know how bad the situation is, go back to this primary school you went to and see if one single classroom has been added. Then calculate how many years ago you went to that school, right? What the population was at that particular time and what the population is today. And then look at the infrastructure. Look at the infrastructure decay. So, recommendations. What do? We must increase education expenditure. We must start to increase it. Look, it is the future. It is a future disaster if we decide not to do what needs to be done. Education must be treated as an investment. We should look at the value chain of education, right? And say, okay, look, if we put in 10 billion yearly or 15 billion, what do we expect back in return? It should be that we bring in finance experts, because we cannot have a population of 180 million people and not put them to use. We must develop skill acquisition centers. What do I mean? It doesn't just stop with education. It doesn't just stop with just people graduating. The countries that invest the highest in education also provide the necessary skills for the people, or for the people to succeed after they leave school. And it's part of the education budget yearly. Building on existing infrastructures. We have these schools, right? All we need to do is start to fix them and increase their value to a certain level that we can boast of outside this country. We must build roads, build rail lines, build good infrastructures that will promote business. Why? Because infrastructure is what attracts industry to absorb what? The graduates. A lot of people who school outside this country, right, who have good ideas, refuse to come back because there are no infrastructures to promote their idea. So government must also provide that infrastructure. Then government must give grants to graduates from skill acquisition centers to start manufacturing. Now, this is the model the Asian countries used, right? They send you to a skill acquisition center, or you go to a skill acquisition center yourself. By the time you graduate, right, government gives you low interest rate loans, right, that you can use to set up some manufacturing center. A small-scale industry that you can employ between 5 to 10 people. And this will also serve as an incentive. It is not everybody that must go to university. If we have skill acquisition centers that measure up to international standards, and people know that government will give them grants when they finish, a lot of people will rather go to these skill acquisition centers. And then, in the book, The End of Poverty, Professor Jeffrey Sachs said something. He said, education plus health, plus infrastructure, plus free market equals what? Unlimited potential growth. He never said anything about mineral resources. The human resources, right? The human capital we have in this country can rule over the whole of Africa if we start manufacturing. And the good thing is that if you look at the Nigerian map, or the world map, has anybody ever spread out the world map to look at the critical location of Nigeria? God really blessed this country. We are the only country in the world, right? Geographically. When you have your spare time, go look at what I'm talking about. Nigeria is like the country in the center of the world. We are that heart of Africa, right? 6 hours up north to Europe. 6 hours down south to South Africa. 10, 12 hours to North America. 7, 8 hours to what? To South America. 6 hours to the Middle East and another 13 hours. We are centrally placed. And the whole of the southern Nigeria is what? Is a seaport. There were countries that we used in this survey, countries like Paraguay, Bolivia, that do not have, they are landlocked. But the interesting thing is this. Their per capita income is still greater than that of Nigeria. For Bolivia to get their goods out, right, they have to go through Chile and go through one of the most treacherous deserts in the world, the Atacama Desert. But guess what? Bolivia makes sure they meet that percentage in education. And the human capital is driving their economy. So, to close out, right? The United Nations said 26%. And the economists know that human capital is the greatest asset of any country. And human capital development, the greatest investment you can ever embark on. If we want to grow a sustainable economy, develop the people and see what happens. Research shows that no nation has ever survived sustainable economic growth and progress with the relegation of education. And we will not be an exception if we do not change course. I therefore plead that with the president and vice president to formulate policies that will return Nigeria to the economic model of the 70s when we invested in human capital development. A friend sent me this 2 weeks ago, and I want to read it out to everyone. A university lecturer wrote an expressive message to his students at the doctorate, master's, and bachelor's levels and placed it at the college entrance in a university in South Africa. And this was the message. Collapsing any nation does not require use of atomic bombs or the use of long-range missiles. It only requires lowering the quality of education and allowing cheating in the examinations by the students. The patient dies in the hands of the doctor who passed his exams through cheating. And the building collapses in the hands of an engineer who passed his exams through cheating. And the money is lost in the hands of an accountant who passed his exams through cheating. And humanity dies in the hands of a religious scholar who passed his exams through cheating. And justice is lost in the hands of a judge who passed his exams through cheating. And ignorance is rampant in the minds of children who are under the care of a teacher who passed their exams through cheating. The collapse of education is the collapse of a nation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that very thought-provoking and enlightening presentation. Thank you. Let's just wait for the last speaker to go. A round of applause, please, for he and the other speakers who have shared their thoughts today. Thank you very much. On that note, I'd like to say thank you to all of us who came from out of Lagos, those of us who are still here. Thank you very much, and happy Workers' Day. Bye.